In a quiet African kingdom where destiny whispers louder than riches, a young man named Chimeka carried a secret that could shake the throne. But he was a poor fisherman. Born a prince but raised among the commoners, his heart longed not for power or wealth, but for true love. In the small town of Oruama, two women, Ijeoma, humble and pure, and Amaka, ambitious and proud, were about to face a test that would reveal the deepest truth about love, greed, and destiny. What happens when a hidden prince returns in disguise, testing the hearts of those he once loved? This is not just a story, it is a journey of betrayal, sacrifice, and the triumph of love over wealth. Sit back, relax, and let me take you into the tale of the poor fisherman who was mocked but returned as a hidden prince. The sun had just begun to set over Oruama village, casting the shoreline in a warm amber glow. Waves rolled in with a gentle rhythm, their crests breaking into sprays of silver mist. Among the fishermen hauling in their nets was Chimeka, a handsome, young man with skin bronzed by the sun and eyes as deep and steady as the sea itself. His canoe, though old, was carefully maintained, its wooden planks polished by saltwater and care. Unlike many of the other fishermen, Chimeka was quiet. He rarely boasted about his catch, and he didn't linger at the beer powwows after a day at sea. Instead, he walked the sandy path to his small thatched hut, carrying his fish in a woven basket. But this evening, his steps were slower. In his hand, he held a single white seashell, smoothed perfectly by the ocean. In Oruama culture, giving a rare seashell to someone was a silent but powerful way of saying, "I see you. I choose you." And Chimeka had only one person in mind, Ijeoma, a humble, beautiful daughter of a local farmer. His canoe, patched over the years with careful hands, was a thing of pride to him. It wasn't the largest on the shore, but it carried him to places where the water turned a deep blue and the fish shimmered like living coins. The other fishermen teased him sometimes for working alone. "You could join a crew, Chimeka. Pull in bigger nets, catch more fish," they would say. But Chimeka only smiled and shook his head. The sea was his refuge, his place to think, and he preferred its quiet conversations to the noise of crowded boats. One afternoon, the market was already alive when Chimeka sampled his fresh fish across his table in the market. "Buy your fresh fish. Fresh fish." Chimeka's voice rang out. Suddenly there came Ijeoma. She was known for her humility, her gentle spirit, and her loyalty to family. Ijeoma was always friendly whenever she passed Chimeka's stall in the market. "Good afternoon, Chimeka," she would greet with a shy smile. "Your fish look big today," she said warmly that day. "They are not as beautiful as your smile," he said, laughing softly, trying to mask his feelings. Ijeoma blushed but kept her cool. Not far away, Amaka, Ijeoma's cousin, stood with her arms folded, watching. Amaka was the daughter of a wealthy chief. She was known for her pride and sharp tongue. Unlike Ijeoma, she had grown to despise poverty. "Look at you, Ijeoma," Amaka teased when she left Chimeka's stall. "Why are you wasting your time talking to a poor fisherman? Don't you know men like him can only give you a life of struggle?" Ijeoma shook her head calmly. "Amaka, he's just a friendly guy. And even if it's more than that, love is not about riches. Chimeka is kind, hardworking, and honest. Isn't that what matters most?" Amaka rolled her eyes. "Maybe for you. As for me, I won't suffer in the name of love. I need a man who can spoil me with designer dresses, bags, jewels, and a fine house. Not one who stinks of fish. But Ijeoma, you deserve better than this. One day, I will marry a man of true wealth, a man who will drape me in silk, feed me with golden spoons, and take me far from this village. Not a fisherman who smells of river water." Ijeoma glanced at her, her voice calm. "Amaka, riches do not guarantee happiness. A man's heart is worth more than his gold." Amaka laughed, tossing her head. "That is why you will remain here, stuck in this small village. But I, Amaka, was born for greater things." That evening, the village square buzzed with talk. A wealthy merchant from the city had arrived with the latest Benz SUV. Amaka's eyes gleamed as she whispered to her friends, "That is the kind of man I deserve." Chimeka, seated quietly by the edge of the square, felt the weight of his reality. No matter how hard he worked, he was just a fisherman in the eyes of many. Ijeoma approached him with bunch of bananas. "You work too hard, Chimeka. You barely have time to eat," she said softly. He looked at her, his eyes searching. "Ijeoma, would you choose a man like me, even if I have nothing but fish?" Ijeoma smiled, her voice firm. "Chimeka, a heart that loves truthfully is richer than gold. I would rather live in a hut with peace than in a mansion full of lies." Those words stayed with him like a flame. The next day, he headed straight to the river and rowed his canoe farther than usual. The air was cool, the sky was calm. He cast his net into the dark water and waited. Among his catch that day was a seashell unlike any he had ever found. White as moonlight, its surface glowed faintly as he held it in his hand. It was the kind of shell that elders said carried blessings from the deep. He didn't know why, but his first thought was of Ijeoma. Ijeoma was always on Chimeka's mind. But her cousin Amaka was a hindrance to them being together. She despised Chimeka for being poor. Her father, Chief Okoye, was a wealthy man in Oruama. He controlled much of the trade between the village and the mainland, and he never let his daughter forget that she was destined for a grand life. Amaka absorbed this like sunlight, growing into a woman who expected the world to bend to her desires. Chimeka had admired Ijeoma for years, but Amaka stood as a stumbling block, doing everything within her power to discourage Ijeoma from being with Chimeka. The seashell felt like the right gift for Ijeoma, not because it was expensive, but because it was rare and beautiful in its own right. In his mind, it carried the message: "I have nothing grand to give but what is pure and true." Few days later, there was an event in Oruama. The village square was alive with celebration. Chief Okoye, Amaka's father, had just returned from the mainland with good news, new trade deals that would bring prosperity to Oruama village. That night, the village square was alive with celebration. There were music, food, and dancing. Chimeka arrived quietly wearing his best clothes, his seashell tucked in his palm. He spotted Ijeoma with Amaka in the center of the village square, happily laughing. Gathering courage, he walked toward them. A few people nudged each other. Everyone knew Chimeka was a humble fisherman. He stood close to them and greeted slightly. "For you, Ijeoma," he said softly, holding out the seashell. "It reminded me of your beauty." For a moment, Amaka just stared at them. Then she reached out, took the seashell, held it and unhappily shouted, "A seashell," her voice dripping with amusement. "Do you think she is a child playing by the shore? Or do you think a poor fisherman can win my cousin with something the ocean spits out?" People laughed. Even a few strangers chuckled. Chimeka's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. Amaka dropped the seashell onto the ground. "Listen, Chimeka," she said, laughing mockingly. "You smell of fish, you live in a hut barely bigger than a storage room in my home, and you wear rags. I am Chief Okoye's daughter and Ijeoma is my cousin. Do you really think you can stand here, in front of everyone, and talk about beauty?" The laughter around them grew louder. A voice of a young man near her added mockingly, "Maybe he will take you fishing on your wedding day, Ijeoma." Chimeka felt the heat rise in his chest. "Go," she said. "Find someone who belongs to your world, not my cousin." Chimeka quietly looked at her, not with anger, but with a calm sadness. Ijeoma, who was standing with Amaka, frowned at her for humiliating Chimeka. "Amaka, that's not necessary. Even if you don't like him for whatever reason, you shouldn't have spoken to him in that manner. He meant no harm. He was only trying to express his feelings for me." Then Chimeka quietly bent, picked up the seashell. And without a word, he turned and walked away. The sound of laughter continued echoing behind him. Away from the crowd, as he walked with his head down, someone called softly, "Chimeka." He turned and it was Ijeoma. Her eyes were kind, and her smile was warm but tinged with sympathy. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "She shouldn't have done that to you." Chimeka shook his head. "It's nothing. Nobody deserves such humiliation, no matter the circumstance." He smiled. Ijeoma then asked, "Can I have the seashell now?" "Yes, you can have it. It's not much, but it's from me." One day it might mean something. Chimeka said and smiled faintly. Thank you, Ijeoma, he said and calmly walked away. Weeks that followed Chimeka became a laughingstock in the village after that encounter with Amaka. Villagers, especially the youth, whispered whenever they sighted him. See that poor fisherman who thought he could win Ijeoma's love with a seashell. They would gossip and laugh even to his hearing. But Chimeka kept mute and pretended not to hear them. Those hurtful remarks continued each time he walked past a group of villagers who found joy in mocking him. Each time he gets home, he would not sleep. He would lay down in his hut staring at the palm roof above him, always thinking about the insults and the kind words of Ijeoma at the same time. Every laugh, every mocking word replayed in his mind. He had always accepted his life for what it was, but something had shifted. There was a stirring in him, a quiet voice saying, "There's more for you than this." By dawn, his decision was made. Without telling anyone, Chimeka packed a small bag with few clothes and left Oruama village. He walked from Oruama to a village where nobody could recognize him. Somewhere far away, that he had never seen, destiny was waiting. The sea breeze followed him, but he did not look back. And Oruama would not see him again for a very long time. Chimeka walked for days along dusty roads, carrying only his small bag with few clothes and food. He crossed fields and passed small villages. The memories of Oruama haunted him, not Amaka's cruelty alone, but the quiet kindness of Ijeoma, her soft words, and the way she had made him feel important. He had no plan, only a sense that something greater awaited him, but he could not fathom what it was. Finally he entered Aleoma Kingdom, a lively village with vibrant villagers. He immediately settled amongst the people of Aleoma Kingdom. Few days after his arrival at Aleoma, he began fishing in their river. He was very good at his trade, and within a short period of time he became well known by the local fish sellers who patronized him more than other fishermen in the area. His sudden fame and likeness by the market women who buy from him made the local fishermen too jealous of him. They became envious and started plotting for his downfall. Before he knew what was happening, they raised false alarm against him. He was accused of fishing in the river on a market day that was sacred to the people of Aleoma. He was falsely reported to the king as an intruder who violated the market day no fishing custom and tradition. Such offense, if committed, attracts banishment to the evil forest. The palace messengers were ordered to bring him to the palace for questioning. Afraid and worried, he initially resisted but was finally brought before the king. He stood in the palace without knowing what his fate would be. The king, known for his wisdom and humanity, questioned Chimeka. "Young man, why did you go against the custom of my people?" "My king, I am law-abiding. Since I arrived in this kingdom, I have never violated the custom of Aleoma land or any other kingdom I have lived in. My father raised me well, and as a fisherman from Oruama Kingdom, I have grown to respect not only the customs of the kingdom I live in, but I hold rivers very sacred." At that point, the king invited the chief priest, the mouthpiece of the gods, to commute with the gods and reveal the truth. The chief priest consulted the gods immediately, and it was revealed from the mouthpiece of the gods that Chimeka was not only innocent of the accusation but also an answered prayer to the king. He was in fact the lost prince of Aleoma Kingdom who went missing at the age of 4. After a failed search mission that lingered for years, he was presumed to have died. No clear picture of what exactly transpired or how he got missing from the palace. But rumor had it that he sneaked out of the palace and went to the stream to swim with other kids but did not return home when others did. As the only male child of the family, the king mourned him and was heartbroken for years. The chief priest further established that a fisherman picked him up near the riverbank of Oruama village, a kingdom far away from Aleoma, and raised him as his son. And after his death, Chimeka took over his fishing business. King Agaba couldn't hold his joy and he summoned the council of elders to the palace. Moments later, Chimeka was led into a large hall filled with elders. When King Agaba, a regal man with eyes like polished onyx, looked at Chimeka, the room seemed to hold its breath. "Chimeka," the king said, his voice deep and commanding, "you are the son I thought was lost forever. You are the heir to Aleoma Kingdom. The crown of this kingdom belongs to you. You went missing when you were young and nobody knew what happened to you. Even the gods refused to speak until now. Today, your destiny returns to you. Chimeca stumbled back. Me, a prince? His voice cracked with disbelief. I am just a fisherman. I have nothing. But the king smiled. You have always had what matters most: courage, humility, and honor. Those are the true marks of a prince. The rest will be taught. For months, Chimeca trained under the king's finest mentors. He learned diplomacy, strategy, and the ways of the palace. He studied history, languages, and everything he needed to learn to live the polished life of royalty. Each day reshaped him, molding the humble fisherman into a poised, confident young man. In few weeks he was transformed. For the first time in his life, Chimeca tasted affluence, royalty, wealth, and power. Most times he would reflect over his life as a fisherman in Oruama and what his life had finally become. His heart never forgot Oruama, or the girl who had mocked him. But more importantly, it never forgot Ijeoma, whose quiet kindness had remained etched in his memory. He realized that true wealth was not gold or land, but character, compassion, and loyalty. Years passed. Chimeca grew into a man of stature and presence. The people of Aleoma called him Prince Chimeca, heir to a kingdom that spanned rivers, forests, and fertile farmlands. Then came the day the king announced to the people of Aleoma that the prince was ready to pick a maiden as a wife. Order was given that all maidens of Aleoma should gather at the village square in 4 market days for the annual maiden dance, where the prince would have the opportunity to pick a beautiful maiden as a wife. On that day, the most beautiful maidens of Aleoma Kingdom participated in the dance, but Prince Chimeca did not find any of them interesting. The king persuaded him to take a wife from the beautiful maidens of the land, but none of them pleased Chimeca's heart. One day he decided to return to Oruama Kingdom to search for love. He returned to Oruama not as the struggling young man who once smelled of fish, but as a man wrapped in mystery and quiet wealth. He didn't enter the village with noise of his royal entourage. Instead, he drove alone in a black Range Rover SUV that hummed softly through the dusty path, its tinted glass shielding his face. The villagers' heads turned immediately. "Who is this stranger?" an old man asked. His car alone is worth more than our entire square," a young man exclaimed. Whispers rippled across the village. Chimeca had returned to Oruama, but nobody knew yet that it was him. That evening, he drove around observing the village he had once called home. The village looked much the same, yet different from the perspective of a prince. The market was alive with its usual activities. He parked his car in front of a busy restaurant, dressed in a crisp white shirt and expensive wristwatch showcasing wealth. When he saw Ijeoma and Amaka walking home from the market, he drove closer to them and parked beside the roadside. Amaka's eyes widened. "Excuse me, ladies, can I give you a ride?" Amaka smiling too widely. "Yes, we wouldn't mind." She hurriedly hopped into the front seat and started flirting with him without recognizing who he was. But Ijeoma cared less and continued walking without looking back. "Why is your friend not joining us?" he asked. "Don't mind her, she is so timid. She dislikes fancy and soft life." "That's strange," he said. But he continued persuading Ijeoma to join them. "Please enter the car, let me take you home. I am fine walking. I don't want to grow lazy because of easy comfort." "And what if I insisted?" he teased. "Then I would insist harder." Ijeoma at the point smiled calmly and reluctantly entered the car. "You are not from this kingdom, are you?" Ijeoma asked. "No, I am just a visitor. I am not comfortable riding with a visitor," she added. "I mean no harm. I am only in this village to see a friend of mine. You can take me home so that I can give you cola." "You must be tired," Amaka suggested. "No need, thanks." As he spoke, his eyes lingered more on Ijeoma, who simply was not moved by the car or the stranger's wealthy appearance. When he dropped them, his eyes were all over Ijeoma, who said, "Thank you, sir. We are grateful." Amaka noticed how he paid more attention to Ijeoma and her heart burned. She quickly dropped her phone number to him. As he drove off, Amaka said to Ijeoma, "Don't you see? That man is a golden fish. He belongs to me. Wealth like that must not pass me by. You, stay out of this. Wealth is not everything. Ijeoma responded. I don't chase after men for what they have. Though I have not yet seen any man who would cherish me like Chimeka did. But if this stranger is mine, he will find me. Her words cut Amaka like a knife. Later that evening, Chimeka drove to Ijeoma's home and questioned her. Why do you not seek my attention like the others? He asked. Ijeoma answered calmly, without even looking at him, because attention means nothing without truth. Wealth is beautiful, yes. But without a pure heart, it is like dust in the wind. Chimeka's heart beats faster. He felt the sincerity in her voice, and for the last time, he concluded that Ijeoma was the true test. I will visit again, he said and left Oruama. Few weeks later at the palace of Aleoma Kingdom, the king was worried that Prince Chimeka had refused to pick any maiden as a wife from the kingdom yet. My son, he said. I am not getting any younger. You are my only son, the heir to the throne of Aleoma Kingdom. You should get yourself a wife as a matter of urgency. Father, I will get married before you even know it. Once I find a good woman, your worries will be over, he responded. The king later sent messages to the neighboring kingdoms to host a maiden dance festival for the prince to visit and possibly pick a wife. When the news got to Oruama Kingdom, Amaka bragged to Ijeoma that the prince is definitely hers. Amaka boasted. Look, Ijeoma, are you aware the wealthy prince of Aleoma is coming to pick a wife from Oruama? Ha! My destiny has arrived. Ijeoma watched quietly. Destiny? What destiny? You haven't even met or spoken to him. Shut your mouth, Ijeoma. Such royalty will not come here without noticing me. Watch how he will choose me. Ijeoma simply sighed. Deep in her heart, she believed love was more than shiny cars and bags of money. The set day came. The drums of Oruama village thundered as the townsfolk gathered in awe and as the colorfully dressed maidens displayed their dancing steps. A convoy of exotic cars and sleek SUVs pulled into the village. Children abandoned their games, market women dropped their baskets of vegetables, and elders whispered among themselves. Who is this mighty visitor? His wealth speaks louder than words. He is the wealthy prince from Aleoma Kingdom. One whispered. Unknown to all, it was Chimeka, returning not as the humble young man they once mocked, but as a wealthy figure cloaked in mystery. It would be Chimeka's return not as a fisherman, but as a royal prince. He dressed in garments of deep blue and gold royal robe, shoes polished to shine like sunlight on water. On his head, a crown of silver and pearls signified his rightful place. But in his heart, he carried one mission beyond the maiden dance, to see the girl who had laughed at him, to witness the weight of her pride meet the weight of truth. And to finally recognize the one whose heart had been true all along, Ijeoma. When he stepped into the village square, the murmur of the crowd rose into a roar as the prince walked to take a seat. He carefully watched the maidens perform their dances without anyone recognizing him. At the appropriate time, when all the maidens had completed their dance and parades, he addressed the crowd. He started by thanking Oruama people for their love and kindness towards him. Nobody understood what he really meant, but they assumed he was referring to how he was received in the kingdom as a prince from Aleoma Kingdom. His voice calm but commanding continued, My people, I know none of you recognized me. I was once a poor fisherman in this kingdom who had nothing to offer for love than a seashell. Some showed me kindness, few loved me, and some too proud to associate themselves with me. I asked for friendship, but I was greeted with humiliation and mockery. Whispers spread, Is that Chimeka? Is he a prince? How did this happen? Moments later he announced, People of Oruama, I am Chimeka. You knew me as a fisherman once. Today, I return to you as the rightful heir to Aleoma Kingdom. But my heart remembers your actions, the kindness and cruelty alike. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some cheered, others whispered uneasily. Amaka's pride faltered, her lips trembling. She tried to step forward, but Chimeka's gaze shifted, calm, discerning, toward Ijeoma. He continued. But today I stand here as the Prince of Aleoma in search of that maiden that will be the next queen of the great Aloma Kingdom. I am here today to choose the woman who saw royalty in me even when no other person gave me a chance. Amaka gazed at him, unable to talk. Time seemed to stop. The boy she had humiliated and mocked, the fisherman she had laughed at, now stood tall and regal. His presence commanding attention. His eyes steady and confident. Her mouth went dry. She tried to speak, but no words came. And she cried. He continued and gazed at Ijeoma, who was as confused and surprised as others. My people of Oruama, this is the maiden after my heart, he pointed at Ijeoma. She showed me love when I was nothing, and today I choose her as the future queen of Aleoma Kingdom. The crowd erupted in cheers. Amaka froze, her eyes wide with shock. And she could not hold her tears anymore. At that point, she realized that she judged wrongly. With the villagers' eyes upon him, Chimeka now addressed Amaka directly. Years ago, you mocked me, laughed at my humble life, and called me unworthy. Today, you see me as I am, yet the choice of my heart does not belong to pride or status. It belongs to kindness, humility, and loyalty. Amaka's face turned crimson. Chimeka then turned to Ijeoma. And there is someone whose heart was always pure, who saw me for who I truly am. She will walk beside me. Amaka looked on, devastated, her pride crushed, her lesson learned too late. Cheering erupted for Chimeka and Ijeoma. Villagers whispered among themselves about justice, loyalty, and destiny. Many who had once laughed at the fisherman now greeted him with respect. Chimeka's dignity, strength, and rightful position said enough. Prince Chimeka with Ijeoma beside him moved through Oruama with quiet dignity, observing the village he had once called home. The prince and his chosen walked together, their hands brushing lightly, two hearts aligned by fate, while the girl who had mocked him learned the cost of pride and arrogance. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Chimeka and Ijeoma walked along the shoreline. As they walked beside the riverbank, Ijeoma brought out the seashell and gave it to him. Chimeka held the seashell, the same one that had begun his journey, and whispered, "This is where it all started." Ijeoma smiled, understanding the depth of the journey without a single word. "And this is where it truly begins," she said. Together, they looked toward the sea, the horizon bright with the promise of a shared future. A week later, Aleoma Palace prepared for a double celebration, the return of the prince and his chosen bride, Ijeoma. The drums of Oruama roared louder than ever. The maidens danced, and the air was filled with celebration. Chimeka, dressed in full royal regalia, sat beside Ijeoma, who was in royal attire as well. The king stood with authority and declared, "Our lost prince has returned. By his side sits Ijeoma, a woman of pure heart. She shall be our future queen." Chimeka and Ijeoma's love had triumphed, not wealth, not status, but integrity and truth. After King Agaba's reign, Chimeka ruled wisely, bringing prosperity and fairness to his kingdom. He never forgot his humble beginnings or the kindness of those who had once seen his heart. Ijeoma remained at his side, the living proof that true worth is found in character, loyalty, and love. Amaka, though regretful, became a humble member of Oruama community, her pride softened by the lessons of the past. The fisherman who had been mocked by one but loved by another became a prince, reminding all that destiny favors those who are patient, kind, and true to themselves. This story reminds us that gold may glitter, but it can never outshine the light of a true heart. Ijeoma, who chose love over riches, found herself seated beside the man she once thought was nothing, but who turned out to be a prince. Life has a way of humbling the proud and exalting the lowly. Remember this: true love sees beyond wealth, status, or titles. It seeks the soul and clings to what is eternal. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Drop a comment below. Until next time, stay blessed, stay inspired, and remember, destiny always finds its way. Thanks for watching. Remain blessed.